we are moving on now to item 9.0, which is action items. 9.1, during the delegate assembly in December 2021, the South Carolina School Boards Association will be taking considerations for amendments to its constitution and bylaws. You have received proposed revisions as suggested by Ms. Garris. I will yield the floor to Ms. Garris to review her recommended revisions and then offer a motion and we will vote.
Okay. Through email earlier, I sent everyone the proposed changes that I wish to make to the rules of procedure and the Constitution and bylaws. I won't go through each of those since you each have a copy, but does anyone have any questions?
Do you want to put a motion on the table and then we'll discuss the actual content of the...
So I make a motion that the board accept the proposed revisions to the South Carolina School Boards Association Constitution and bylaws and rules of procedure as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Garris. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Guyton. All right. All right, you want to just open the floor for discussion, Ms. Garris?
Yes.
All right.
So does anyone have any discussion?
I actually have a couple items of discussion. And I am working with several different pieces of paper here.
You want to talk through the reasons for the change, Jada? What are you trying to change?
Yeah, so underneath each one, there's the rationale. So the proposed changes to the rules of procedure.
Ms. Garris, hang on just a second. Ms. Halliday has copies of what you sent. It's so much easier to work with paper up here than it is the screens. Yes, that will help us. I'm sorry. All right, Ms. Garris, go ahead. I'm sorry for the interruption.
So I sent the links by email, the Delegate Assembly Handbook and the Constitution and bylaws, but the proposed changes to the rules of procedure, so that would be Rule 9, and that can be found on page 13 of the 2020 Delegate Assembly Handbook. And I would ask that Rule 9 be amended to include the last sentence that was struck during the 2020 Delegate Assembly. And that sentence is, proposed resolutions or constitutional changes submitted under these circumstances will only be allowed when written verification is provided that the action is requested by a majority vote of the submitting board. Now, the rationale for this is during the December 2020 Delegate Assembly, a board member of the Lancaster County School District made a motion and it passed to strike that last sentence in Rule 9 that no longer requires written verification because he based this on the assumption that the delegates here have been voted on by their board and are representing their board. However, in Lexington 1, individual board members are certified as delegates without the knowledge of the member board, thus allowing that member that was delegated last year to make changes to the bylaws, constitution, and resolutions without all the board members' knowledge or approval. So he made the wrong assumption in assuming that all boards vote on their delegates that they send to the assembly.
Well, and actually the statement that was stricken in those rules, and the rules just apply to that one meeting because they proposed new rules at each of the assemblies, but that sentence that was stricken was actually not applying to all proposed resolutions, but just to any that a member might stand up and make ad hoc at the delegate assembly. And the reason he struck that is because, yes, the delegates are there on behalf of their member boards, but all of the proposed resolutions are supposed to flow through boards. And so he was just saying that statement was redundant because the delegates are there representing their boards, not themselves. And so that actually is not a significant change to the rules because it's a very limited situation where at the delegate assembly, if for some reason a board member decides to stand up and propose a resolution, they can't do that because they can't act on behalf of themselves at the delegate assembly. And that's why that statement was in that section, because that's what that whole section is about.
Okay. But he actually made that change, and I put in quotes here. He assumed the delegates here have been voted on by their board and are representing their board, but that was not true. So I'm not real sure why you didn't speak up at that time and say that we may not want to change this because I wasn't voted on by my board. There may be other boards here, you know, delegates here that haven't been voted on by their board either.
But there's no requirement that boards vote for their delegates. They just have to be certified, which is a form. And I think you did some research and contacted Mr. Price at the School Boards Association, and that is left up to individual boards. And this kind of goes to one of the other points that you make here. As you know, because you served as a delegate in 2018 at the Delegate Assembly, we certify our delegates by virtue of who is planning to attend. And so each year, the delegates have to be certified, I believe, by like November 20th, November 19th, after which is after the date that you're registered for the conference. And so we have 9 votes as Lexington 1. We would never have more than 7 delegates there. And so everybody that attends on behalf of our board is certified as one of our delegates. And so I'm not sure that the point you're making is that we need to vote on everybody, because, I mean, if you want, you served as a delegate the year that you went, you haven't gone since, and so you haven't been a delegate. Likewise with other board members that go. And so I'm not sure, if you choose not to attend the conference, should we vote for you to be a delegate?
Well, I wasn't allowed to go last year, so there's only 1 year that I didn't go. So that was in 2019.
And that's because the School Board Association specified that one person attend. And Ms. Smith, who was chair at the time, designated me and designated Dr. Powers as alternates because she had to submit the form in September last year. And so that's what she did.
Right, and no one else knew that at the time. That's the whole point of the changes to the rules, is that this man stood up and made a change to the rules of procedure that y'all were operating under that day. And he said, I want to strike this last sentence here because the delegates here have been voted on by their board and are representing their board, but that was not true.
But that's just his statement from he represents
Right.
Lancaster. That was not, he was just making a statement of presumption about, I don't know that any other boards vote on their delegates. I
Oh,
don't.
yes, they do.
Not
Yeah,
all of them
they
do.
Not all of them may not, but I can tell you this, they're very well aware of who's going to
But
the
I don't think we
delegate assembly.
can make a,
And if they hadn't, I think someone would have spoke up there, unless there's other people like you who are just there and the rest of the board doesn't know who's
Okay,
going,
all right.
and they
all right,
don't speak up and
we
say.
can move on from that one. I think we've,
So we're under the proposed changes to Constitution and Bylaws, which is Article 5 of the Delegate Assembly, Section 3D, and that's dealing with the composition. And so, under the first paragraph, each member board will assign its vote or votes to one or more of its board members for a term of 1 year, who will be certified as voting delegates to the Delegate Assembly. No voting delegate will have less than 1 vote, but member boards with more than 1 vote may assign or apportion its votes in multiples of 1 to as many of its members as it chooses. And so I want to add 2 sentences there at the end that say, there will be no requirement that the votes be restricted to 1 member. All voting delegates and alternate delegates will be afforded equal access to the Delegate Assembly, because last year,
but Ms. Garris, and I understand your point,
Mm-hmm.
but last year it was a complete, 2020 is not how we should change policy, because it was a completely unique year where only 1 delegate was allowed to attend. Every other year, you've been permitted to attend and encouraged. I mean, board members are always encouraged to attend the Delegate Assembly. So I don't think that that's necessary, because beginning in 2021, hopefully we'll all be there.
hopefully, that's the key word, we don't know. And we don't know if there will be some other circumstance where the School Boards Association will say, look, you're only allowed 1 delegate this year. So that's why it needs to be part of the Constitution that says at no point in time will a board be allowed to only send 1 person.
All right, we can propose that.
Okay. So Article 5 of the Delegate Assembly, there's conflicting language here in Section 3 and Section 4. So Section 3E says each board member may designate for each voting delegate an alternate delegate who may serve in the absence of such voting delegate, but who will otherwise have no voice or vote. But down in Section 4, it says an alternate delegate for each voting delegate will be named and certified. So it's either will or it may.
That is for those school districts who have 7 school board members,
Mm-hmm.
but they have a small district and they get 1 vote. And so this is to ensure that the alternate doesn't just show up and try to vote on behalf of the district when they are not the designated delegate. That doesn't apply to our district. And so I don't think I don't want to step into the waters of trying to dictate something for smaller districts that doesn't apply to us. So I don't think that we should be
Well,
meddling
these are
with that.
changes that are going to the nominating committee at the School Board Association. These aren't changes that, when we vote on them, they become the new
But they
constitution.
reflect the will and wisdom of this entity.
Right, so that's why you get the choice to vote it up or vote it down.
But if it doesn't make sense, this body shouldn't vote for it. I mean,
Well, I totally agree with that, even though we vote for a lot of things that don't make sense. Your vote counts, so if you don't like that this conflicts for one reason or another, you can vote it down.
Because, I mean, we're the fifth largest school district, and we have one of the largest delegate assignments. But there are many, many districts that only have one vote.
I understand that too.
And this is very important for those districts so that they can define who their delegate is, and so that in case there's a rogue member of their board that shows up and tries to vote inappropriately, this is the Constitution is designed to prevent that. And so that's why that language is in there. That it does not really apply to us.
I don't know how you're saying that a constitution doesn't apply to us, because there are several boards with several delegates. This constitution applies to everyone.
Yes, but this language does not apply to us because we will not have a situation where an alternate is substituting in for the delegate.
I don't know.
Well-
You don't ever know. That's just it. That's why you need to have good policies in place before something happens, instead of after it happens, then you're trying to deal with the aftermath. So Article 5, Delegate Assembly, Section 4, Certification of Delegates. The executive director will notify each active member board. I'd like to change that to say each active board member.
And I can tell you that this one, and I'm not trying to argue, but this will not fly because we individually, the seven of us, we are not school board association members. Lexington District One is a school board association member. And so they will never direct their communications to each of us individually and ask us to respond individually. We are a member board, not board members in their eyes.
Right, so that's why there's a sentence in here that says, the official voting delegate certification form must be signed by each active board member, and the member board must vote to approve their delegates. And my rationale here would be that several times they send us emails from the School Boards Association. They give us phone calls when there's something important. So they have a way to get this information out to every member. So I think we need to be active in the certification of our delegates process.
And all right, we can propose this.
Okay. And then proposed changes to legislative resolutions. Number 27 is school bus safety. The rationale they didn't include in there, and there was a lot of conversation that day about whether they were going to vote to continue this as a resolution.
Actually, Ms. Garris, that was not the conversation. I rewatched this on Sunday, and the conversation was the board member from Florence proposed an amendment to this resolution where it says a citation against the registered owner of a vehicle, and she wanted to add the driver. However, state law, the conversation was, after her amendment, is that the driver is already cited by state law, and that the reason this is the legislative resolution for the School Board Association is because oftentimes it's very difficult for, somebody will, if they don't have the driver, the school bus takes a picture of the license plate, and the registered owner shows up and says, well, it wasn't me, and they have no way to hold anybody accountable. And so this resolution is an intent by the School Board Association to make the registered owner be careful about who they loan their vehicle to, and possibly inform the magistrate's court of who actually caused the infraction. And I can tell you, I just looked, and the current legislative resolutions on the School Board Association website, this resolution didn't go anywhere. The amendment was defeated, and the resolution is intact exactly like it is.
Correct. And I'm very, very familiar with this. I've been to the State House and testified about this law, so I know all about it. There were questions about what fines were going to be collected, the registered owner. So in case there's ever a chance that I'm not there again at the Delegate Assembly, I wanted this rationale sent to the School Boards Association so that when people started asking those questions, that they would have those, such as all fines collected will be received and administered by the Department of Education for the purchase of digital recording devices mounted on school buses. The registered owner of the vehicle shall not be responsible for the citation if he provides an affidavit that the vehicle was not under his care, custody, or control at the time of the violation, and the affidavit must include the name and address of the person or company that had care, custody, and control of the vehicle. And I also sent a link to where it shows similar programs are successful in curbing the amount of violations based on the passage of this law in other states.
And I appreciate this detail, and I know Debbie Elmore, the legislative advocate for the School Board Association, is aware of all this. And usually, I think in the resolutions, it cites the state laws that are applicable to that resolution already. And so I don't know if if you extracted this language from the current state law.
Yes, well, when people were asking these questions during the delegate assembly, they were not given answers, and it wasn't clear on what was going on here. So that's why I wanted to be sure that the School Board Association had this information.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
No, that's it.
All right. All right, Board, do you have any questions for Ms. Garris concerning her proposals?
So we're taking this as a slate of recommendations to be made?
That's how it was offered, yes.
Okay. And walk us through the process of when this actually happens. Sorry. You got me, Mary Beth? Did you get it? Yep, okay. Walk me through this process of when this does go before a deliberative process, what does that look like?
So if we, as a board, approve these recommendations, then it would be forwarded to the legislative committee, which is a couple of the officers on the School Board Associations and the directors, and Debbie Elmore and I believe Scott Price. And the legislative committee will evaluate the recommendations and decide whether or not to forward them to the full assembly, and then they will be incorporated into the recommendations at the full assembly in December at the conference.
And so ultimately, this is just setting prioritization at the end of the day. I mean, the South Carolina School Board Association carries no weight with it other than making recommendations to legislators, so on and so forth, and a representative body, if you will, of the school districts of South Carolina. Is that a fair way to put that?
They are, in addition to being our, member association,
Sure.
they are, provide advocacy and lobbying. We have, they have a lobbyist.
Right.
And there's a list of 30, 40 resolutions, and they're basically position statements, so that, because we're not all there with the School Board Association person who's there all day at the General Assembly. And when bills come up or amendments to bills come up that apply to public schools, whether it's school buses or teacher salaries or retirement or what it's amazing the number of things that touch public schools. Sure. That go through the General Assembly. She uses the resolutions or these principles as her guiding documents for how to advocate on behalf of the school boards around the state. And so these are position statements.
Right.
And so they're constructed as a resolution or position statement, and then there's just the rationale. And I appreciate Ms. Garris's work on this. I'm not sure that the language of the rationale is actually part of what we vote on. I don't really know. I don't know if the delegate assembly approves that or not. But these are, they're to guide the advocacy efforts of the people that lobby on our behalf.
And these also go to the School Board Association Legislative Committee. So from there, they decide if they want to put those in the Delegate Assembly Handbook. So we can send them anything we want, but essentially they
That's
have
right.
the final
That's what I said
Right.
in response to Dr. Guyton's. The legislative committee will meet over the summer and decide which recommendations to forward to the full assembly, and then they're discussed at the full assembly, and that can be voted up or down.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, so we have the motion on the table. Ms. Garris, would you mind just repeating your motion?
Yes. I move that the board submit the proposed revisions to the South Carolina School Board Association Constitution and Bylaws.
Thank you very much, and we had a second from Dr. Guyton. All right, board, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, anyone opposed to the motion? All right. So I'm sorry, I didn't, what?
So if we vote in favor, the way they're presented will be sent
Yes, on behalf of the Lexington One Board, yes. Okay, I'm gonna ask it, we'll start with the ayes again. All in favor, please raise your hand. All right, anyone opposed? I'm opposed. What do we do when we have a tie? I'm not a Robert's Rules expert, but thank you.
Ordinarily, you would be the tiebreaker, but since there are only 6 of you here today, your stalemate is right now.
Okay,
What's our timeline for submittal?
they had to be submitted by June 14th. On the, just to err on the side of, I will vote yes. I will change my vote to yes. So the motion is approved.